Hey guys, this is a new thing I'm trying out, so forgive me if things are a little bit messy. If I can teach at least one person something in this video, I will see it as a success. So that's pretty much all I had to say for the intro, and let's get started. Just sit back and listen to the sound of my British accent. In this video I'll be covering the skeletal form, which is the basic building block of all artwork. It's all pretty self-explanatory really, but if you can master it, then you can pretty much take on any pose imaginable. However, before we get started, there's something else I want to talk about. Okay, so you remember all those books you read about head sizes? I personally don't use them. It can be good to know, but when you start drawing different angles and poses, positions or whatever, you won't really have a need for them. Plus, when you've drawn the same characters over and over again, you get the hang of where everything goes anyway, and you won't really need to worry about sizing and stuff. Another reason is that people aren't going to be checking to see if you're pinpoint accurate with height. They're going to be more focused on the overall look of the art, especially when it comes to manga, and they're going to be flicking through the panels. They're not going to be checking to see if it's exactly whatever head size is tall. As long as it looks close enough, it should be fine. And the final reason why I don't do it is different art styles can cancel out the rules anyway. Like, you get Fairly Odd Parents style, which is obviously not drawn to scale and stuff like that. So, and there's also different character types. For example, Akira in my manga is 14, but he's the average height of a 10-year-old. Well, roughly. So loads of different things can come into play, and that's just why I personally don't worry about head sizes too much. When you're creating a character, it can be good to know. It can be good to know if you're using realism, but when it comes to cartoons, it's not really that important. But in some cases, it may be useful to know the head size of your character. This is just going on my personal preference. Everybody has their own way of doing art. If you want to do the head size thing, then go right ahead. I'm not completely saying do not do it. I'm saying that it doesn't help me much personally. And I should also note that these examples aren't drawn to scale either. They're just something I threw together to show roughly the sizes I would use to compare, but these would also vary depending on different attributes of the character. As you can see, I usually draw the females slightly shorter than the males, and then it's just basically the height ranges I would use. But that's my style. That's my personal style. You want to do it differently, go right ahead. But these are just the basics. I'm just here to teach you the basics. Basically, all you need is one of these. Here you can compare the height of your characters. These are my characters. So if you're making a manga, then you can just easily refer to this and see how high they are and how much they measure up to each other. But enough of this subject, let's move on to the skeletal structure. So I'm actually going to stay on the same example for what I'm going to talk about next. The skeletal structure is pretty self-explanatory. You can pretty much see where everything's going to fit on the structure itself. As you can see, as I've said before, this is my character reference sheet in its skeletal forms. And I've added red lines just above the heads, just so it's easier to see how each character would measure up to another one. So I can easily see that Tobiko, which is obviously the one with the tail, would measure up to about just above Kira's pelvis and stuff like that. I can just easily refer to it and just pick up where I left off. So I'm going to add in the actual character features, and we can take a closer look at this. And here they are in all their glory. I should point out that you don't have to keep exact to the skeletal form, as long as you keep close enough that you don't lose all the features, because it is just a rough guideline for you to work with. I've actually laid the two forms on top of each other so you can see how everything fits onto the skeletal figure. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say skeletal figure. As I said before, the skeletal figure is pretty self-explanatory when it comes to finding where each part fits on the body of the character. However, I'm going to quickly list them just for those who want to know. Okay kids, so follow the bouncing arrow as I quickly teach you the different parts of the skeletal figure. So, head, torso, pelvis, shoulder, elbow, hand, knee, foot. And that's not some weird rap. So yes, that is basically where everything should go, and let's move on. Now let's take a close look at the head, where the more challenging parts of the skeletal structure are. You may notice that there are two lines crossing over the head. Well, those aren't so random, and I'm going to explain them to you using the magic of arrows. The vertical line is what we call the center line, which basically defines where the character is going to be looking. And the horizontal line, you guess, is the eye line, and you guessed it. I actually went ahead of myself a bit there. The eye line, you guessed it, is where the eyes are going to fall. With children, the eyes roughly fall 3/4 of the way down the head, and adults it may be slightly higher. Again, that'll be something that I'll cover later in a lesson. Well, in a later lesson when I'm doing like adults and stuff, but we're just talking about the skeletal structure for now. Let's add in the details and you can see where those are going to fall. I should also point out that the eye line usually measures up with the middle of the ear, and the nose falls exactly where the two lines cross over. For the next part of the lesson, I'm going to briefly cover the muscle tone, but I will make a video later on explaining in more detail along with building from shapes. Muscle tone is usually mapped out with circles as displayed here. Muscle tone can also affect the basic skeletal structure. For example, muscular guys may have a smaller head compared to their body size. Those which are overweight may have more loose and overhanging circles that seem to fall off the normal skeleton. Taller and more lean characters may have less muscle that stretches down over the skeletal structure. You may also note that each body has a different skeletal frame underneath it. The circles for the muscle maps were simply drawn on top. Again, I will cover that more in a later video. It's hard to just sit and explain something, so now I'm going to show you guys a picture so you can get a better idea of how the skeletal structure works when someone's drawing on top of it. One more thing! If you get that reference, I applaud you. When it comes to drawing poses, there are references all over the internet to practice on through the magic of Google and other search engines, stuff like that, other websites. There's stuff all over the internet you can use to reference from. You can even be your own model. So I'm going to use an awful screenshot of myself I took from a video, and I'm going to be using that. And I also just picked out a headshot so I could keep things simple. The lower skeletal figure is pretty much self-explanatory anyway. It's just the legs and the pelvis. The most challenging features are on the top of the skeletal structure, which is why I chose to go into this in more detail. Alright, so let's get started. By looking at the reference picture, I'm going to roughly mark out where the head and arms and all that's going to go. The head is basically an upside down egg shape, like a circle and then a little triangle on the bottom kind of thing. I should also note that your skeletal structure doesn't have to be a carbon copy of the picture you're referencing. As long as it's close enough, you should be fine. I also sped this up a bit so we're not sat here for a week watching me draw this picture. I'm keeping it very simple. I'm not going to add muscle tone for the sake of this video because we're just using lines and the basic skeletal structure for now. So as you can see, I pretty much have everything mapped out. So now what I'm going to do is make the layer red and make it a bit lighter so it's easier to draw on top of it, and then create a new layer on top of that and start drawing in the features. Now it's time to start adding in the details. As you can see, I'm going to start drawing in the eyes on top of the eye line. Got the nose going to be falling on the center line. I keep flipping to a reference character because this character was created today and I'm not exactly familiar with it, so I have to keep looking at the picture to make sure I get it right, simply. One thing I love about digital art is how you can easily edit out mistakes, but it can be hard to pinpoint where you want a line to go though, especially if you're using a tablet that doesn't have a screen built in, like mine. So you have to look at the computer screen and line up your hand with the screen, and yes, it's a pain to get the hang of, and it can be twice as hard if you're using a mouse. Don't even get me started on the days I had to use a mouse. It was awful. If you're sketching with pencil, I would suggest drawing the skeletal structure very lightly, as you can see me do in my other videos. Never draw it too hard or too dark, otherwise you won't be able to erase it or draw over it very easily. So it needs to be very, very light, to the point where you can hardly see it. Just to the point where you can just see it enough just to get the basic idea of where things are going to be. I also wanted to add, while you're learning, referencing is fine, drawing from screenshots is okay. I mean, you have to learn somehow, right? What I will say is don't credit it as your own art. Let people know it was a reference, and please ask for permission from the original artist before you do so, and if you're able to do so. It's only fair that you credit back the original artists. if you choose to post your work online, obviously. And trust me, it will make your life a lot simpler because you won't get people saying, hey, that's so-and-so's art, blah 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 blah, you just copied it. Well, I know, I wouldn't recommend posting it actually. You can post it, but I wouldn't recommend posting it if you haven't asked permission or if you haven't referenced back the artist, because that's when trouble starts. And you have to draw it yourself. No stealing. Stealing is bad. While the video is still going on, I'm just going to let you guys know that Volume 3 has been proofread halfway through. There's about half of it left to do. So it should be out pretty soon. Making some progress finally. And of course, Volume 4 work always continues. If you want to find out more about my manga, then check out my website. It's www.taleskip.com for those of you who are just joining us. It's kind of an action-adventure comic. So if you like Pokemon, Shaman King, it's very similar to that. So yeah, go check it out. It'll be pretty awesome. Obviously, when you get to the website, just click on the manga tab and then you'll be taken to a page with preview pages on, and you can find out where to buy it and stuff. It is actually available on an Amazon search through Amazon.com, UK, and in France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And the original language is in English, unfortunately, because I don't have translators at this stage. I should note that under the volumes, you'll find the little white pages of the preview pages. Just click on the image and it'll bring you to a new page with the whole, I think it's the first like 12 or so pages just laid out for you, and just check it out there. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. It's a fun project so far. I'm hoping I'll be able to carry it on for a long time yet. Again, what I like about computers is you can easily go back and edit it. But if I was drawing through pencil, I would make sure that I was still drawing very lightly at this point, so changes were easy to make. Also, I'd be making less errors because it'd be easier to place the pencil on the paper than it is to place it on a computer screen. That's just me anyway. Well, that about wraps up for this video. I've made some skeletal structures for you guys to practice with if you want. You can find a download link below, along with an examples page that I filled in just to make sure everything was working as it should. Remember, art takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, so you have to work hard at it like anything else. Also, everyone has their own art style. If you're going to reference any art for practice, don't expect it to turn out exactly the same. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. I can't exactly say that for sure. And I'm going to close this video. So, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned at least one thing from watching this video. See ya!